In a big busy city where buildings touched the sky, there lived a small boy named Leo. He didn't have a mom or a dad. He didn't have a warm bed or a house filled with laughter. Leo was an orphan, and the city's cold streets were his only home. Every morning the sun would wake him up, not a gentle kiss from a parent. He would see other kids going to school, holding their parents' hands. They had lunch boxes and brand new shoes. Leo only had his worn-out clothes and an empty feeling in his stomach. He often wondered what it felt like to be loved, to have someone ask about his day. It was a question that echoed in the lonely alleys where he slept. Life was a constant challenge for a boy with no one to guide him. Finding food was a daily treasure hunt, but the prize was never shiny or new. It was often a leftover piece of bread, or a half-eaten apple someone had thrown away. The nights were the hardest part. The city was loud, but it was a lonely kind of loud. The sounds of cars and faraway music couldn't fill the silence in his heart. He learned to be invisible, to not bother anyone, because being seen often meant being chased away. He was like a little ghost drifting through a world that didn't seem to have a place for him. He learned to read people's faces, who was kind, who was angry, who was sad, just to stay safe. He would often sit by the big public library, watching people go in and out. He couldn't go inside at first because he was dirty and had no shoes, but he was smart. He would listen to the stories people told as they left. He would pick up old newspapers and try to sound out the words. The world of letters and numbers became his secret escape. It was a place where he wasn't an orphan, he was an adventurer, a scientist, a hero. He promised himself that one day, he would walk into that library through the front door. He promised himself he would build a life bigger than the small, cold corner he slept in. Even on the toughest days, a tiny spark of hope flickered inside Leo. He saw kindness in small moments. A baker once gave him a warm roll without saying a word. An old woman smiled at him and gave him a blanket. These small acts were like fuel for his little spark. They taught him that even in a world that seemed gray, there were specks of color. He held on to these memories tightly. They reminded him that goodness existed. He decided he wouldn't just survive. He would learn, he would grow, and one day, he would be the person giving out warm rolls and blankets. He would be the color in someone else's gray world. Growing up alone meant Leo had to be his own teacher, his own parent, and his own friend. The world was not kind to a child without a family. He faced many doors that were closed to him simply because he had no one to speak for him. When he tried to find small jobs, people would ask, "Where are your parents?" The question always stung, a reminder of what he had lost, or perhaps never even had. He learned that to get a chance, he had to work twice as hard as anyone else. He had to be more polite, more honest, and more determined just to be seen as equal. He didn't have a home to go to after a long day, only the quiet comfort of his own thoughts. His motivation was simple and powerful. He never wanted another child to feel the way he did. He dreamed of a world where every kid had a safe place to sleep and a full belly. This dream was not just a fantasy, it was a blueprint for his future. Every time he felt like giving up, he would picture a small child, just like him, huddled in a cold alley. That image pushed him forward. He started by doing small jobs. He collected old bottles and cans for recycling. He offered to carry heavy bags for shoppers at the market for a few coins. Each coin was a brick, and with these bricks he was slowly, painfully, building the foundation of a new life. He saved every penny he could. While other kids might spend their money on candy, Leo saved his for books. He bought secondhand books on math, on business, and on computers. The library became his second home after he finally cleaned himself up enough to walk in without being stopped. He taught himself how to code from old computer magazines. He would go to internet cafes and pay for just 15 minutes of computer time, using every second to practice what he had learned. The glowing screen was a window to a different universe, a place where his circumstances didn't matter, only his skill and his ideas. By the time he was a young man, he had a plan. He had noticed that many small businesses in his city didn't have a website. They didn't know how to reach customers online. Leo saw an opportunity. He used his self-taught skills to build a simple, beautiful website for a local bakery, the same one where the baker had once given him a warm roll. He did it for free. The baker was so happy that he told all his friends. Soon, other small business owners wanted Leo to build websites for them. He charged a small fee and his business began to grow, one website at a time. He was no longer just surviving, he was building. Leo's small website business grew faster than he could have ever imagined. His designs were clean, his service was honest, and his story was inspiring. People wanted to work with the young man who had built himself up from nothing. By the time he turned 28, Leo was no longer the boy in the shadows. He had sold his company for an amount of money that was difficult for him to even comprehend. He was rich. He bought a beautiful apartment with a big, comfortable bed. He filled his fridge with all the food he could ever want. For the first time, he felt secure. He had everything he had ever dreamed of as a lonely child. But after a few weeks of living his new life, a familiar feeling crept back in: emptiness. The fancy apartment was quiet. The expensive car felt hollow. He realized that the money itself wasn't the goal. The goal was the dream that had pushed him through all those cold nights. The dream was not just about saving himself, but about saving others who were walking the same path he had. He looked out his window at the sprawling city below. He knew that hidden in its alleys and forgotten corners there were countless other Leos dreaming of a better life. He knew exactly what he had to do with his wealth. His first project was a big one. He bought a large old building in the same neighborhood where he used to sleep on the streets. He renovated it from top to bottom, turning it into a bright, colorful, and welcoming place. He called it the Lighthouse. It was not just an orphanage, it was a home. It had warm beds, a library filled with books, a kitchen that always smelled of fresh food, and a backyard for kids to play in. He hired kind and loving staff, people who understood that a hug was just as important as a meal. He wanted every child who walked through its doors to feel seen, valued, and loved. Leo didn't just write a check and walk away, he was there every single day. He knew what it felt like to be alone, so he made sure no child at the lighthouse ever felt that way. He would sit with them in the library and help them with their homework. He would read them bedtime stories, the kinds of stories he wished someone had read to him. He taught them how to code on new computers, showing them the same skills that had changed his life. He wasn't just a benefactor, he was a mentor, a big brother, and a friend. He was living proof that their past did not have to define their future. Leo's generosity didn't stop with the lighthouse. He started a scholarship fund for orphans and underprivileged children, ensuring they could go to college or trade school without worrying about money. He believed that education was the key that had unlocked his own potential, and he wanted to give that key to as many young people as possible. He would personally read their application letters, not just looking at their grades, but at the hope and determination in their words. He saw himself in each of their stories, and he felt a deep connection to their struggles and their dreams. His wealth was a tool to build bridges for them to cross. His acts of kindness were often small and personal. He would often walk through the city just as he did when he was a boy, but now, instead of looking for scraps, he was looking for people to help. He would buy a hot meal for a homeless person, sitting with them to share a conversation. He would pay for a struggling family's groceries at the supermarket. He once bought an entire shoe store's stock of children's winter boots and donated them to community centers around the city. He never did it for attention or praise. He did it because he remembered the feeling of receiving a small kindness when he had nothing. People started to hear stories about this kind young man. They called him the city's guardian angel. But Leo never saw himself as a hero, he just saw himself as someone paying it forward. He often said, "I am not special. I am just a person who remembers what it feels like to be hungry and cold. If you remember that, it is impossible not to help." He inspired others to do the same. Local businesses started donating to the lighthouse. People volunteered their time to read to the children. His single spark of hope had started a bonfire of compassion that was warming the entire city. Leo's journey from a lonely orphan to a beloved philanthropist sends a powerful message to us all. It shows that no matter how difficult our beginning is, it does not have to be our end. It proves that one person's determination can truly change the world, not just for themselves, but for countless others. Leo's story is a beautiful reminder that the greatest wealth we can ever have is not the money in our pockets, but the kindness in our hearts. He shows us that anyone, absolutely anyone, can choose to be a light for others, chasing away the shadows and making the world a brighter place.